Welcome back, movie fans. It's The Movie Date with Rob and Zakk. I'm Zakk.
Hello, I'm Rob.
Rob's feeling a little under the weather today. But you know what? That's not going to stop us from delivering you good folks some great podcast.
You didn't tell them that you didn't give them the tagline.
Oh yeah. This is a podcast for people who like movies but don't want to be too smug about it. Just in case you forgot, or if you're just coming in new.
It's not about forgetting. It's about
if you're just coming in new, fresh, hot out of your cinema seat.
Seat? Like a cinnamon bun?
No, like a
seat?
cinema seat.
Is there icing on the cinnamon seat? You can just
moving right along.
Lick up off the armrest.
Oh my gosh. That's
an innuendo.
So Rob, it seems like we flip-flop often. Like you're feeling under the weather and I'm feeling a lot more excited than I was last time.
Yeah. You know what it was? I got off early today, like at a decent hour where it was still like lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my body was like, what is this? Like it's like acclimating. It's like you're coming up from like you're living.
I know that feeling. You don't know what to do with yourself.
You're like a deep sea diver coming up from the super depths and if you go up too quick, like your head explodes or something.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
It's not vertigo. What's it called?
Like this sound like the bends or something.
Yeah, that's what it is, the bends.
Where you
great Radiohead album.
You die. It's okay. Remember that time you sent me that song and I listened to it and I was like, it's all right. And you were like, how dare you? You pulled a me.
Rob defends Superman and
I pulled a Man of Steel. Like,
yeah, Rob defends Superman. I defend Radiohead viciously.
I like Radiohead. I like him as a film composer more than I do as a
he's
like
good.
A songwriter.
He's good. He was that Johnny Greenwood also did some stuff too. Today we are talking about the Adam McKay directed Vice, featuring fat Christian Bale once again.
That's mean.
Well, I mean, it's what it is.
No, it is. I've been shitting on it too for that. I'm not shitting on it, but I was just like, I'm tired of that.
We just want him to stop trying to kill himself.
I just like, who are you? You're great. We get it, buddy. You're really good at your job, and you love your acting. Just dial it. You're not going to be any less good if you just dial back the method.
Yeah, just keep it a regular, shape and form, please. Like, go back to what you normally were.
Yes, you're gonna die, man.
Yeah. Like you see actors like continue to like stay in great shape, and I feel like that's fine.
Jake Gyllenhaal has been like in like a chiseled like fucking bodybuilder,
like lumberjack man.
Yeah, like in Southpaw, he's ripped. Even in like the movie where he gets his it came out like 2 years ago where he like got his.
Oh no, he was looking a little emaciated in Nightcrawler. So it felt like
but that's within range. That's just like my producer or whatever is giving me a reduced calorie diet, so I'm just kind of like a little skinnier. But that's like there's like he's most of the time he's in like solid shape. Like in that movie where he plays the runner who has like one of his legs amputated. He's still. I'm always the whole time like aside from that leg, he's real fit. You're looking good.
Aside from that leg, which is gone.
Aside from that horrible debilitating injury, he's like really fit.
But before we get into all of the vicery, if you want to call it that, we got some movie news.
Yes.
Rob, what you got for us?
So I showed you the trailer for. Let's start with the one that's the most stimulating, I suppose. I showed you the trailer.
Stimulating.
I showed you like a well-stimulated prostate. I showed you the trailer for Brightburn.
Brightburn, produced by James Gunn.
And I said, I remember when I said it, I was in like the comment section someplace, and I was, I think it's a very appropriate thing to say. I said, I hope Zack Snyder got a royalty check for the first half of that trailer.
Yeah, you were like, I'm going to show you something interesting or whatever. And I was like, oh, and I remember seeing like some kind of article about it, but I hadn't seen the trailer. And wow, like there it looks to be like some copyright infringement going on.
Yeah, I feel like,
yeah, you're right. That is the same exact font. The score is like
very similar,
hauntingly similar.
Yeah. And I feel like it's easy to induce those Superman tones. Just play like nice, soft, like C major pads.
Well, I mean, like,
gives you that Americana feel.
Didn't you say that he had also come out with a statement saying like, "Yeah, I came up with this original idea"?
Well, it wasn't nearly as smug as you just made it sound right there. But
Right.
he was like, I've because I guess after the fallout from like the Guardian tweets and everything, he's kind of, I know he's gonna be maybe working on Suicide Squad 2, which I'm on board for. But I guess he had some downtime and they were trying to come up, because that dude doesn't get around as much as I think he does. Right. Aside from Guardians, he did that movie. He kind of produced that movie, The Belko Experiment, which is about like people get locked into an office and they said you have to kill somebody every hour or we don't let you out of here, and it turns into like a crazy...
So it's like Saw in an office.
Yeah, something like that. And it actually looked pretty cool, but I never got a chance to see it. But he doesn't have that many things he's producing outside of like the movies that he's directly working on,
right?
As opposed to like I don't know any number.
But you said that he had come out with this thing.
So yeah, like he was, I can't remember if it was on an interview or it was in like a magazine or something, where he said something like, I had this really interesting idea of like a horror-driven superhero thing, and like the article was posted online, and his quote was like one of the top subtitles, and then everybody in the comment section below posts all the other ideas of like, because Brightburn is essentially,
if Superman was evil,
was
like
evil.
Inherently bad,
and in a very horror tone,
and it plays it from like the child perspective, like Superman as a kid Superman, and it's got everything in there that is Superman. I'm talking like
red cape,
dad drives an old blue Ford, like living on a farm. There's corn silos in the background. His spaceship's in the barn.
Yeah, which I guess it's fair to like say that Superman doesn't own these ideas necessarily, but
I was like, come on.
Yeah. The Zack Snyder font, like the Man of Steel font, to me was like, wow. I was like, that's like
you're going for it, buddy.
But to be fair, James Gunn and Zack Snyder have worked together before. They worked together on Dawn of the Dead. James Gunn wrote that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Zack Snyder directed it. So they're actually pretty. And to be fair, Man of Steel is James.
So Zack Snyder's probably in on it.
Yeah, I mean, Zack Snyder's not the kind of person that would like hit up James Gunn like, you fucking owe me. Like he's not.
Yeah, it's probably not going to ruin their friendship.
Yeah, and like Zack Snyder's a collaborator. He likes for people to be able to do what they want to do. That's if there's anything I'm sure about, it's that. And for also like James Gunn has said like on Twitter, like someone asked him like what's his favorite DC film, and he said The Dark Knight, and then he said also number 2 is easily Man of Steel or whatever. So like he likes that movie. So I don't think he's doing it to be like, oh, Man of Steel, oh, fucking roiling, serious Superman. Oh, what can I do? Make him evil. And then the internet.
I think he's doing it because he's trying to find a vehicle for what he thinks is going to be a good horror. Yeah,
and I think sort of subverting the Superman. And also, like for anyone listening, I actually really dug the trailer. I'm not like disparaging it. I think it's
pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I don't usually dig on horror. You know this. It's not my preferred genre by any means.
You're a scaredy cat.
No, well, I mean, not that. I used to not watch horror movies, not because they were like super scary to me or anything, but because they would just kind of like give me nightmares, and I didn't like dealing with nightmares.
Yeah.
But as time grew on, I started to realize that like horror is probably like the least artisan. If you can of like all the movie genres, like
it's the most.
Think about how many like D-list horror movies there are. Like
yes,
so it's
the most formulaic. It follows more than superheroes or romance movies. Like it has usually most of them have a definite, clear cut formula. Even when on that episode where I talked about like the new Halloween movie, which I was like, it's all right, it's pretty good, but like even then I was still like, they're all those things are still there. He's gonna get out, and there's a wreck, and then there's mayhem, and
I mean, you even had like 2 horror movies come out, like 3 of them, right? That come out in the same year that were all pretty much the same premise, just tweaked slightly. So you had like A Quiet Place and Bird Box, and that other one, like Can't See, Can't Hear, like all the memes, man. Like that's what horror is to me. It's all, it's just an ever turning roulette of
I would say
the same thing.
I would say the ratio of like, if you compare it to another big giant genre, like superheroes, or and would be maybe the closest thing that's analogous, because superheroes tend to have somewhat of a formula as well. The
Mhm.
ratio of like good superhero movie to bad one is so much taller than the ratio of like good horror movie to bad one. For
Right.
every good horror movie, there's like 90 bullshit ones.
And if you really think about it, all of the really, really great horror movies that we have, that we think of in our minds as like, oh, those are the best ones.
Go back
They
and
came
watch
out like 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
shit, or 20, 30 years ago, stuff like that. Like they're like, what horror movies that have been coming out in like the last decade that are like, oh yeah, that one's got staying power. Like we haven't seen a The Shining.
Yeah,
You know?
ironically, all the new horror movies we get are like
Like people will be really
They're
about them for like a month or two, and
Yeah.
then it's forgettable.
But for the ones that have quote unquote staying power, they're all like remakes. Like
Mhm.
Halloween has staying power if you keep remaking it every couple of years or
Right.
whatever. And like Hereditary is an example of like a horror movie.
Like the only one that even comes to mind is like The Conjuring, I guess. Like I haven't even seen the movie, but I
there are
understand its pop culture staying power.
for
I
a
guess.
PG-13 horror movie, it's pretty talking about the last great horror movie I saw was like Hereditary. My cousin
Mhm.
like broke me down into watching it, and I was like blown away. That movie kept me up for a while. It's legitimately terrifying, and it's a slow burn, and it builds up, and there's a big conspiracy theory, and like my cousin just kept looking over at me, like watching it vicariously
like
through me.
I honestly thought if they wouldn't have like churned them out like butter, you know, like the Paranormal Activity, like at least the first one, like could have
Yeah.
had some staying power. Like,
I remember the first one too.
yeah,
It was
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, got tired really quick though. Anyway, back to James Gunn.
Yeah.
They released the comment or whatever, like, and then a bunch of people in the comment section below started posting like other examples of characters that have done this exact same thing.
The first one I thought of was Omni-Man
Yeah,
from the
from
image from Invincible.
And the one that immediately came to mind to me is very similar but like more scary probably is like there's a comic book called Irredeemable by Mark Waid,
Mhm.
who is a great Superman writer. So it would be obvious that he would write, if he wrote an evil Superman story, his is quite effective. He also writes something called I can't remember the name of it, but it's because Irredeemable is like a 37 issue long story. It was one of his own creator-owned comics that went on for a while, and then he does a second sort of, not a sequel, but it's sort of like it kind of runs concurrently with it, about a super villain who was once this guy's enemy who becomes a superhero essentially. And he does a very good job at making it believable, and the dread is very human in it. But like, yeah, the idea of evil Superman is not something I'm always fond of.
It's been done before.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do it, I mean, doing it in like a horror way is probably the
most interesting way
to do it. And as that trailer starts, like the first half of the trailer is full of roiling humanity, and it has all the like, you are a gift.
It's like Damien Superman.
Yes, and then there's those close-ups of the kid, and they're just unnerving and unsettling. Yeah. And the end of the trailer is particularly gross too, when he super speeds to that lady and like cracks her neck
in the freezer or whatever. Yeah.
Like that was pretty gross, like too. I am excited. We'll definitely probably do an episode on that when it comes out. James Gunn and all of his like family are like heavily involved in this. His cousins, I believe, are working on it too. Brian Gunn and Michael or something with an M. Anyway, move on to something else. Yeah, Brightburn is the name of it. Looks pretty
we
cool.
do have some news as far as like awards, if you want to get into that kind of smugness.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. We can talk about like the surprises. There's too many to go through. Christian Bale thanked Satan.
Yeah, that was particularly funny for me.
Yeah, I
don't think it's because he's like a Satanist or anything. I think it was just he was trying to make the joke, I guess, that Dick Cheney is like Satan. Like, so he had to get into like that kind of like mode of, you know, playing a really bad evil dude.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, sure, that's fair. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh. Just stop. Did you see the actual video of him doing it?
No, I didn't.
He looks like normal Christian Bale again.
Yeah.
Like he's not huge and fat. So I'm just
That's
like,
good for him.
good for him.
Did he do that weird accent of his where he's like kind of in and out of the Welsh? Like,
I don't know if it's a
because I remember seeing like his acceptance speech or whatever for The Dark Knight, and I was just like, what's going on with your accent? Like you're like, you sound like Kevin Costner right now.
The further you go back in time, the thicker his accent gets. Because the longer he's been in America, the more it kind of erodes.
The more he's been playing all of these American roles. In fact, I even looked it up, like how many roles he's played where he actually uses his original accent.
It's not many.
There's like 3 movies.
Yeah, maybe like Reign of Fire. Yeah, the one that feels
and the other one is
him.
like The Prestige.
Yeah, if anything, The Prestige he Englands it up.
He puts a little more class in it.
Is The Prestige a good movie?
I
feel like it is.
I mostly like it.
Yeah. Every Christopher.
I'm not the biggest Hugh Jackman fan, but I love me some Michael Caine's in it too, right?
Your cocaine is in it?
Michael Caine?
Your cocaine.
Stop, Rob. Stop. This is not Rob and Zakk make bad puns. Okay. This is.
You do that every episode.
Yeah, you're right.
You know that. So don't you come at me with that.
I'm not gonna. No. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. What was the other one? Like, best score was by the guy who did First Man.
I'm scrolling through it right now.
Which I never saw because Damien Chazelle is on thin ice with me, baby. Damien Chazelle directed La La Land.
Yeah, best original score, Justin Hurwitz for First Man.
Yeah.
I didn't even. That's a movie? What movie is that?
It's about the first guy to go to the moon. It looked okay, but I just don't. I'm not.
I mean, you also had like Marco Beltrami for Quiet Place, and I was like, yeah, and I would have rather that have won over both Black Panther and First Man, if we're being honest, like because that. Black Panther kind of made that movie.
Yeah, Black Panther has like some cool pieces in it, but like it's weird. Like I don't think in the history of like film scores, a film score has won that also had a prevalent like soundtrack of songs. I feel like that's because what you're doing, that's kind of like cheating in a way,
right? Because
you're adding songs that are already finished, made by other people into your movie. So the composer has literally less work to do, so his job is less difficult.
That's true.
And like as much as I do like some of the music from Black Panther, I can't quite remember a lot of it, but I do remember sitting in A Quiet Place being like, this score is doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. So
like lots.
Yeah.
Like there's hardly any dialogue. So it's gotta be.
Yeah. I haven't heard First Man's score, but I don't think it's as good as that.
You said it wasn't so surprising. I thought it was kind of surprising that Into the Spider-Verse won the best animated picture, and it was going up against like The Incredibles 2. That's like something people were waiting years for, something that was kind of a big deal. Yeah. And then this movie just comes out of nowhere and steals the show. Yeah,
the reason I didn't think it was surprising is because like Spider-Verse is such a good movie. Not that The Incredibles 2 isn't, but like I don't know. I saw the writing on the wall. Like I was like, Spider-Verse is gonna do it.
I just like seeing
Spider-Verse is more impressive, probably from an animated standpoint.
I like seeing these newcomers, like the guys behind the Lego movies and stuff, keep doing this good work, and kind of like taking the rug out
Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Well, the studio that does Lego movie and stuff also did Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so I was
like Phil Lord and Chris Miller didn't direct it.
So I kind of like seeing them take the rug out from under, these, big powerhouses like Pixar and like DreamWorks and stuff. Like, hey, there's other great animation out there. You guys can't just have the monopoly on it.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, those guys are good.
Just my thoughts on it.
Any other good ones?
Yeah, we got I don't know if he's a newcomer or what, and I haven't seen the movie. I don't know much about it other than it's just won crap loads of festival awards and stuff. But we got the best director of a motion picture, Alfonso Cuarón, for Roma.
Alfonso Cuarón directed.
He beat out Spike Lee and Peter Farrelly for Green Book.
Alfonso Cuarón is a great director. He did the movie Children of Men,
okay,
which is a fantastic movie. It's like a really science fiction post-apocalyptic thriller.
Yeah, I know what that's about.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was him.
What are the other movies he's done? Because I don't think he did the third Harry Potter movie, which is when they all started getting good.
Yeah,
Apparently, and he's done some other really good ones that are
that's interesting.
quite impressive. I can't remember.
Yeah, I need to see Roma because I mean, obviously it's winning awards and stuff, but I also just keep hearing how just genuinely good it is. So we need to check that out, Rob.
Alfonso Cuarón.
Well, I think we need to inject a little smug into the podcast, every so often. One thing that this isn't movie related.
Wait. I'm looking up his filmography real quick, just so we can look at it. He's done a bunch of Spanish films.
Mm-hmm.
Solo con tu pareja, A Little Princess, Great Expectations, Y tu mama también.
Like an adaptation of Great Expectations?
I think so.
Okay.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Children of Men, Gravity, Roma.
Gravity, okay.
Yeah. He's up there, and he's done some short films, a bunch of documentaries, and he's worked on some television as well. He's good, man. He's kind of like he's also a producer on Pan's Labyrinth. He gets around. Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's
like an Ang Lee guy. Everything he directs is different, and everything he directs is usually pretty good.
Pretty good. Except for that Hulk movie.
I don't hate the Hulk movie.
No,
it's okay. It's a lot of him like being introspective, but I kind of dig it compared to the 2008 one.
Yeah, the 2008 one just feels like a modern superhero movie.
Yeah.
But one thing that kind of like took me by surprise. Now this isn't movie related per se, but the winner at the Golden Globes for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy TV Series was Michael Douglas for The Kaminsky Method, and that's like a sitcom. Is it? Right? I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know.
From what I understand, I think it's like a 3-camera sitcom. And he won out against Jim Carrey for that Showtime show Kidding, or HBO show, whichever it is. And then he also beat out Donald Glover for Atlanta.
Good. He needs to be
not good. Dude,
he needs to be taken down.
Have you seen the second season of Atlanta?
No, I haven't seen the first season.
Dude, it's a phenomenal show.
I will. I'll get around to it.
Like,
you can't be a world famous musician, actor, and comedian. You've got to pick two.
He's the Renaissance man, dude. Donald Glover is
Black Jared Leto, and I don't like it.
What? He's Jared Leto.
I said he's Black Jared Leto.
Hardly.
He does music and he does acting and he does other stuff.
None of Jared Leto's music is even any good.
That's not true. I like a lot of his music. You take that back, you son of a bitch.
Okay. I'm sorry, Rob.
It's all right.
Well, it's surprising to me because I'm like
I've never seen any of those three things.
Yeah, so Michael Douglas is good, but I mean, good Lord, like even I haven't seen it, but even just from the trailers I've seen, Jim Carrey's got some good stuff going on in that Kidding show. And I mean, like I've seen the whole bit of Atlanta. Like he does this thing where he plays the creepiest character I've ever seen on just about anything. Donald Glover, he does like whole whiteface or whatever, and plays like this caretaker of like a mansion or whatever. And I gotta tell you, that's like some of the most it was one of the most unsettling episodes of TV I've ever fucking seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And I'm just sitting here like, really? For a fucking, you're gonna pick in this age of TV where TV is like on one of the highest levels it's ever been, ever since like Breaking Bad kind of like, pulled the curtain away from what you could do in TV, and you're gonna give the shit to a guy in a sitcom.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a sitcom. I haven't seen any of these things, so it's weird for me to judge. But I have a tough time believing that it's probably better than either of those two. Yeah.
We also did Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy. Olivia Colman for The Favorite. She beat out Elsie Fisher for 8th Grade.
Is that the one directed by Bo Burnham?
Mm-hmm.
The YouTube thing?
I kind of want to see it, man.
I do too. It's supposed to be good. But
it's supposed to make you feel stuff. I like movies that make you feel stuff. And you say you like movies with heart, so.
Yes. It's the most important organ. Pumps blood to the rest of the movie.
Glenn Close won for The Wife, which I'm glad she beat out Lady Gaga, because I just don't I don't want,
as much as we despair,
I don't
A Star
want
Is Born
anymore A Star Is Born awards, please God, no.
It's probably good. Like we'll probably see it one day and we'll be like, it's pretty good. People seem to really like it.
I just don't.
My smug.
It could be a really great movie. It could be, Rob.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see the remake of a remake.
Yeah.
You know, I'm boycotting it for
principle.
For reasons.
Is this like your Disney?
Purely
is this
principle.
like your Disney boycott that you said on Facebook, where you were like, we need if half of us just stopped seeing.
No, that wasn't me who said that. That was a Memphis comedian, Charlie McMullen, or he said something. If we just boycott Disney, we will cause them to lose like billions of dollars in revenue over the course of one summer.
Should we want that though? Think of all the people that would probably lose their job if that happened. People.
Look, I realize that it's, you got to think about the human and the people, but I'm also thinking about the big faceless corporation and just the giant monopoly they have over entertainment right now.
Yeah, well
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, advocate.
And I don't feel like.
Yeah, well, I think the way to do that is
I don't want Johnson & Johnson to have a monopoly over all toiletries.
This podcast is sponsored by Johnson & Johnson. Zakk. Get out. You're off the roster.
I thought it was sponsored by Horizon Studios.
It is. Horizon Studios is sponsored by Johnson & Johnson.
Got it.
They pay for all our toilet paper products. No, I feel like the better thing to do is just advocate for better antitrust or monopoly laws and stuff.
Well, what I think is because
that's what you really want.
I don't think we need to boycott Disney per se. What I think we need to do.
I was about to say, you'll lose Star Wars, Zakk. You know that. You'll lose it. All the games, all the movies, TV shows, Mandalorian canceled.
Oh my God.
They've already canceled Daredevil, Zakk. Is that what you want? Is that what you want?
No, I'm not saying we should really boycott Disney. What I am saying though is maybe we should support some of these smaller things, like these smaller budget movies, things that are good that are just not being seen by the massive eye. Like, think about it, like back in the 70s, movies
Aquaman.
Movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest were like box office smashes. Those are the kinds of movies making big money, like movies like Godfather and stuff, like these really, I don't want to keep saying the word because I don't want to come off as hipster like that, but artisan kind of
just dramas, like drama.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, when are we gonna stop just shoving our face with tentpole stuff? Why can't we go have a picnic?
I feel the better way to look at it is there was I can't remember, there's a journalist called John Schnapp who he would work for a bunch of entertainment news things and movie news stuff. And he always said that if you want to support smaller films or whatever, more independent films, he's supporting the tent poles gives the studios more leverage to do that. So if you go see if you're one of those people, because you're kind of over Harry Potter, is one of the things you've said in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go and see Fantastic Beasts 2 or whatever, that Warner Brothers is going to take that money and they're going to invest some of it in because the next piece of whatever Fantastic Beasts mythology they're doing or whatever. But some of it is going to go to smaller films that cost $10 million.
I mean,
it's sort of like a rising tide lifts all boats things. There's a movie coming out called.
You're talking about trickle down movie studio economics,
but it's
essentially.
But I feel like it's true. If 20th Century Fox didn't break the bank with the Star Wars movies in the 70s and 80s, think about all the movies that may not have gotten made.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
It is kind of like that, and I feel like
they probably would have never have.
Now,
they probably would have never pumped money into Fox Searchlight.
Yeah, and I feel like this applies very much to a company like Sony or Warner Brothers. I don't know that it applies to Disney because Disney only makes
big
things. It's Star Wars, Marvel's remaking their Disney movies, and occasionally you'll get a Tron Legacy or something.
Well, I want to see Disney do more. Okay, let's not boycott Disney, but I want to make a push for them to make more original stuff.
Yeah.
Like they do with I love the Pixar branch of Disney. You know, all of that stuff is
Yeah, that's a
aside
good
from the
point.
sequels, they're all like highly original. Like they put you know, these indie directors and stuff in charge of their little shorts and
They're
whatnot.
very acclaimed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's
weird
good
that
stuff.
It's weird that that's the only facet of their company that does that. Like they
Weird, huh?
like the last several years, like they did remakes of like A Wrinkle in Time and stuff. It's all based. It's all stuff that's either based off existing properties. Like I think they're in charge of the Chronicles of Narnia stuff at a
What
time.
even happened to those movies?
They got sold to another company. They're gonna make a fourth one eventually, which I won't probably not see. But like everything they do is existing IP or stuff that they literally own.
Right.
So like
it's like how Nintendo keeps just making Mario games.
Yes, I mean
yeah, they use like this. They keep making Mario games and Zelda games and Donkey Kong games, and that's all they'll ever do. That's why there's like Mario Party 25 now.
But I would say the argument that I made is true for other studios. So if you're a person and you're like, oh, I'm tired of DC or something, well, because of you get movies like DC, you'll also get things like Blade Runner 2049 and stuff that is it based off of the movie that came before it.
But I didn't expect it.
But very original and stuff. So like I feel like it's a balancing act. And I always say like if you want to like you have to like it all because it all comes the people that work on those big giant blockbusters are the same people like the Russo brothers went from working on like little like comedy shows to doing like giant blockbusters. And they have they don't want to do that forever.
Right.
Probably.
It makes sense.
So I think it's a balancing act. Let's get into I don't think we have anything else.
Well, one more thing. I know that you will appreciate this. Best supporting actor in a motion picture. Your boy Mahershala Ali for Green Book.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Did you see the season 2 trailer for True Detective? Or whatever, it's getting like quite good reviews.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. What I've heard.
Yeah,
I even have like a contemporary who actually made it into that show as one of the extras or something because you know they filmed in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. Is he one of the? I think it's children kidnappers.
Her name is Steph Bright. I think she does like improv and whatnot at the joint downtown. So
cool, nice, awesome.
It's pretty cool. We'll shout out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's get into Vice.
Time for Vice, baby.
All right.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a prediction as you're scrambling to control right there.
Just a little Google type.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to predict that when you left Vice, you thought the movie was mostly good, but left you feeling a little unsettled, 2 feeling that the movie is not very funny and a cartoonized version of Dick Cheney to some degree. And while the performances and the writing of the movie is good, when you consider that movies are people standing in front of cameras pretending to be people, but ultimately it kind of feels disjointed and a little empty at the end.
You know, I couldn't have said it better myself, Rob. I think we might just finally agree on something wholeheartedly.
Can't have that. Shut it down. Shut it down, people.
It doesn't make for good podcasting, does it? We have to be at opposite ends of the sword here. Okay, Vice, according to Google, is Governor George W. Bush of Texas picks Dick Cheney, the CEO of Halliburton, to be his Republican running mate in the 2000 presidential election. No stranger to politics, Cheney's impressive resume includes stints as the White House chief of staff, House Minority Whip, and Defense Secretary. When Bush wins by a narrow margin, Cheney begins to use his newfound power to help reshape the country and the world.
Very good.
And I have a little bit of a problem with that synopsis.
Yeah.
But we can get into that probably more close to spoiler time. Rob, what were you expecting going into this?
I was expecting lots of good acting. Like I was more or less excited for it. I like Adam McKay. In fact, in preparation for this movie, Were
you expecting it to be just like The Big Short, but with Dick Cheney?
Not exactly. Although there are like narrative things that it does that feels like he pulls it right out of a Big Short or whatever. The Big Short. Yeah. But in preparation for this, I went back and I looked at like Adam McKay's filmography and how much that dude gets around. And like how much he produces and writes. That guy works on a lot of projects from like Daddy's Home.
Well, I think Will Ferrell was even like a producer on this. That's like their company.
Yeah, like Get Hard. He worked on like Get Hard and all these like some of these Kevin Hart movies. He's directed like Step Brothers, Anchorman, Talladega Nights. He's worked with Marvel on the Ant-Man stuff. So he gets around, and he's sort of trying to turn a more serious turn these last couple. Also,
but doing it in a style that's very him.
To bring it back to like a thing we talked about earlier this episode, that comic book Irredeemable. He apparently got the rights to it, and he is going to be making that into a movie.
Interesting.
And that's from 2016 is that news. So it's been 2 or 3 years and nothing's in sight. So probably
maybe that movie was this movie.
Yeah, maybe they saw this trailer and they were like, "Fuck, cancel it." Call Adam.
All right. So what were you expecting?
I was expecting like good acting. I was expecting like them to try in some level to both humanize Dick Cheney while not making him seem nicer than he is, because he's not. And I think they do as good a job as they can with that. My expectations were sort of middling. I wasn't super.
But is that what you really want out of a Dick Cheney movie, is for it to humanize him?
We'll get into that. I think in some way when you make a movie about anybody, you humanize them.
That makes sense.
There will be,
that's fair.
A good example is like, you could say this is a movie about like a bad guy or a villain. There Will Be Blood is a good example of a movie about a real animal who is humanized throughout that whole movie. That
makes sense.
Even as you don't like him, there's still plenty of times and you're like, well, you can't help but like, there's parts where like, unless you're making like a comic book villain or something, even then there's plenty of cases of them being humanized. So I feel like that's a little unavoidable, but that doesn't even take away from the movie's main thrust. So
I feel like movies...
But my expectations were sort of, middling. I was, interested to see it, but wasn't excited. So yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was a big fan of The Big Short.
Me too.
And I felt like I had slept on it a little bit, watched it, really loved it. And so, I was expecting about the same kind of feel of a movie. And I was also expecting it to be funnier than it was, I guess.
This movie or The Big Short?
This movie. I was expecting this movie to have some of that kind of signature McKay humor in it.
Yeah. And then halfway through, I realized that's impossible. So I was like,
and I'm like, I was thinking to myself also, before walking in, like, dude, I don't think I want that though. Like, I guess.
I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's doable. To his credit, he tries a couple times and it doesn't work at all.
All right. What did you think overall?
Yeah, I think like what I said in my predictions, I walked out being like, this is probably a good movie. It is at a 62 on Rotten Tomatoes. It is 2 points away from being like rotten, what they would call rotten. Right. I don't always agree with that, but I feel like I
would agree that it's a good movie, but it's not his best work.
I feel like let me put it this way. This is the best way I could say it. This is as good a movie as this could be. I don't feel like there's any other way to do this kind of a movie. Because this movie...
The only other way you might be able to make a Dick Cheney movie better than this is if you went full on, like, highly dramatized, very, very serious.
Yeah. And I feel like he does that. There's parts of this movie where he does do that, but it is sort of billed as like a satire, and there are satirical moments sort of peppered.
And there's wacky stuff in there, like this isn't really a spoilery per se, but there's
what you're gonna talk about right now. Go ahead.
There's a moment, oh man, I want to talk about two key parts. I feel like I should wait till spoilers, but
we'll get through the non-spoilers quick, but you can spoil this little thing if you want.
Okay, there's a moment in there that's kind of reminiscent to how he does things in The Big Short, where he's doing these scenes that are inside Cheney's house, when he's deliberating being Bush's running mate. He's like, we don't know what was going through his mind or what he talked about with his wife, and he's like, so
by the way, they're using another like third person-y narrator.
Yeah, there's a narrator kind of throughout there,
which is also from The Big Short,
and it also plays a big part in kind of like the twist in the third act, which you think there couldn't be a twist in something we seemingly already know about.
Which is,
I believe
the narrator is also fictitious. I believe that's not when we get into spoilers, that person doesn't exist. That's not a real person.
Do you think?
No, I'm pretty sure it is. I think I remember reading that.
Do I need a comptroll?
You can if you want.
Nah, I don't think it's important. Anyway, you know, they say, well, we don't know what was going through his mind or what he talked about with his wife, you know, during this time.
Yeah.
And so it kind of sets it up like that. And, you know, it's them lying in him and Christian Bale and Amy Adams, you know, lying in bed, you know, talking about it. And then they just dive into a Shakespearean monologue and soliloquy, and I'm just like, what is going on? This is great. This is insane.
My emotions on that went from weirdly uncomfortable to like
I started laughing my ass off.
Like laughing, like, and then in the middle I started when
it started getting dark.
When he starts like growling and grunting a little bit, I started laughing like, is this?
It's wacky,
and then at the end it goes down again and I get like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was like,
this movie has lots of moments like that where
like,
you want to
it was like something out of Macbeth or something.
Yeah. He literally does this, and I think this is part of like McKay's style. Like I feel like his style is better than the movie itself. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like this movie does so many things, in so many times it does this where it like almost makes you want to root for him, and then brings you back down into like, fuck this guy.
If this movie was,
and then makes you want to laugh, while at the same time making you really uncomfortable that you're laughing at what you're laughing at.
If this movie, if he had like a greater degree of creative control, where he was able to like not make a movie about Dick Cheney, but about some faceless politician, about with all nondescript characters or whatever, and he could have sort of done more of what he wanted to do, the movie would probably be better. So he's sort of handcuffed.
You think it would be better if it was a more fictional piece?
Yes, if he was, but he's handcuffed by our knowledge of Dick Cheney because we know a lot. As a public, we know.
I like the way you put
him.
that.
Yeah, which is why I say the Big Short is an easier movie to make because one, it's less,
and people are not versed in you know, in betting against banks. They're not versed in like hedge funds.
Yeah,
they're
but
not,
also
and they don't know the story really behind all that.
The Big Short is easier to tell. Not, and that's all that is true.
Like the Big Short is kind of an expose, really.
Yeah, but also the characters are, you know, this isn't really a spoiler, but the characters are more likable, and they're people that you can like. There's even a part where like Brad Pitt in the bid. There's a bunch of people who get the drop on the fact that there's a bubble and they sort of bet against the market and make a lot of money. Two of those guys. Yeah,
you're right. Characters like Brad Pitt, you like want to root for him. You like,
because Brad Pitt hates the system, and there's a part in the movie where they're the two dudes he's helping figure out there's a bubble and we're gonna make so much money, and they start dancing, and Brad Pitt goes, "Would you cut that out? Like people are gonna lose their homes and it's gonna be disaster." And you could show a little bit of respect about that, and like little things like that make these characters more likable. And like even the fact that like at the end, even Ryan Gosling's character has a little bit of remorse where he's like, "I can feel you there judging me," and he goes like holding this check of money and he goes, "I'm not the bad guy, I'm just trying to get through this thing," or whatever. And because he can do that, and he can fictionalize pieces of it, it's, you know, that's easier to do, and it makes it a better movie.
You're right. It is difficult to do that with like someone like Dick Cheney when we already know most of the story.
Let's talk about let's quickly go through performances and just get into spoilers because it's hard to talk about this movie without.
Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld, pretty great. I like it.
I thought he was fine. I went back and watched some interviews of Donald Rumsfeld, like on Colbert Report or whatever, and it doesn't pass for me.
Doesn't.
It's too much Steve Carell. Like, and like there's a part
in my mind, I feel like
he looks about as close as you can, but he looks about as close as Sam Rockwell does to George W.
I think Sam Rockwell does a pretty great George W.
He does.
We're kind of at odds on this. Like, I thought it was pretty good.
He does as good as he can, is what I'll say. It's better.
It's better than fucking Josh Brolin.
Maybe as like a performance, but like visually, I don't think it is. Like,
even just as like an impression, it's 10 times.
Yeah, they're both mediocre as far as I'm concerned. But like, but the Steve Carell thing, like there's a part where he calls Colin Powell a chicken shit and stuff, and he does it like Steve Carell. Like I saw like Michael from The Office kind of do it, and I was like, I just don't feel it. And like, I
think the reason why I like it is not because I feel like it's an accurate portrayal of Rumsfeld per se, but because I like watching Steve Carell act like that and say those, you know, horrible things and stuff.
I agree.
Like I like watching him play a dick.
Yeah,
I
he doesn't get to
guess.
do that a lot, and I think it's a nice turn. Did you ever see him in Foxcatcher?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Ugh,
that was unsettling.
uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah, those teeth, man. Weird teeth and his hunched over. Yeah, that's a great movie. But yeah, I just felt like
I for once really enjoyed the hell out of some Amy Adams in this.
what do you mean for once? She's great in all sorts of stuff.
Uh,
Enchanted.
I just feel like she's a little overrated.
I would say she's a little overexposed. She's everywhere.
Yeah,
But I still like her. I like her in a lot of stuff. But
I'm not saying I don't like
also
her,
she's Lois Lane in Man of Steel, so she
Yeah.
gets like the 10-point Snyder boost for me.
I mean, I really honestly like that beat at the beginning of the movie, you know, where she's giving him the pep talk and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You really see kind of like the dynamic that they have, and you see
Some nice
why
little-
you see like the kind of like the social power of like all these, you know, first ladies or political women.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, a nice little piece of directing from Adam McKay. He splices in pieces of her past,
mhm.
just like real quick flashes of like abuse or something. And that's a great example of like humanizing somebody, even who you may not like.
right.
Because I don't like her as, you know, First Lady Cheney.
Yeah.
Particularly.
And even in that scene too, like there's like a fly buzzing around, and they're like, you know, in their like 60s house with no air conditioning and stuff. All of the period stuff seems super authentic, you know, super great. Like also stylistically, he does a lot of just weird shit. Like borderline Tarantino kind of weird shit.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about more in spoilers.
Yeah. There's also like
Is there any stuff that you just really couldn't stand that you didn't like about this movie? Like stuff that would cause you to give it like a really low Rotten Tomato score.
Nothing that would cause me to be like, this movie's bad. It's sort of like, it's hard to say the movie's bad because, like I said, a movie is people standing in front of a camera saying things they don't believe and pretending to be people they're not. So in that way,
What do you think of Christian Bale's performance?
I think it's great. I think it's pretty solid.
It's spot on.
But I think that like as a movie, it struggles very much to like get me engaged. Like at the end, it's sort of like the whole movie sort of holds you outside the entire time, and you're watching this like crazy thing. And at the end of it, you're like, all right.
And also,
by the way, did you watch the post-credit scene?
uh-uh.
There's a post-credit scene. It's kind of funny. It's kind of more fourth wall breaking stuff, but I'll tell you about it in spoilers.
I also feel like this movie is like a little disjointed. Like it's okay for your movie to do flashbacks or cut back or kind of like work around like you know, a central thing that's happening, which this movie does. It acts as if it's using the you know, the Bush era as kind of like its, or especially like the election and stuff, is kind of its like central focal point.
Yeah, I would say it's more like 9/11, but keep going.
But not really. Like I feel like those are the smallest. Unless I watched a different movie, I felt like that was kind of like the smallest parts of the movie. Like it touches way more on, you know, his rise to, you know,
it does.
power.
But I'm saying that's his anchor point. That's the kind of thing they kind of keep sort of coming back to as they keep, because it's.
But I feel like it's not done.
It's disjointed.
Yeah,
that's like what you said, and like I believed that earlier. Like it's weirdly disjointed. It's almost like you get like
I felt like I was watching,
and there's no way it's. I feel like there's no way it's not going to be.
Like I felt like I was watching like the second act of a movie before the first act and so on. Like I felt like stuff was very out of order.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things where like the movie was always going to be like that, because you're
like to me there's not a real clear you know, rising, climax, and falling.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, the movie is because it covers such a vast amount of time, and you have to tell it in bits and pieces. You get kind of a disjointed sort of impression of a story, and I didn't, and that's unavoidable because you're covering such a large amount of time. So I always kind of knew it was going to be something like that going in. Let's just go ahead and get into spoilers because I'm trying to talk
spoilers.
About stuff.
Like okay, some of the stuff he does stylistically.
Let me talk about the stuff that he does like stylistically that's meant to be funny but isn't.
Okay.
Okay. Or not even like necessarily funny. There's stuff that he does stylistically that sometimes I liked it, but I'm like, it kind of like makes the movie into a cartoon. to some degree. Like an example of like where I wasn't laughing for some, I don't even know why, because in another movie it might have worked really well. The false credits he has. In the middle of
Yes,
the
that's
movie.
what I was going to bring up. Like a quarter of the way through the movie, the narrator.
I literally checked my watch and I was like, nuh-uh.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Liar.
Like it's like what, 15 minutes into the movie, maybe even. Like the narrator is like, yeah, and he turned it down and went to live with his wife, and they raised their children, and pretty much blah blah blah, lived happily ever after. And then he's like. And then it starts rolling the credits, and like the real credits, like Christian Bale, Dick Cheney, like. And
then the real phone, like the phone rings and everything, which breaks it all. I think what he's trying to say is, it probably is what he's saying is like, this is what we wish would have happened,
right?
but it doesn't. And the part where our narrator is revealed to be a guy named Kurt, who is the guy who gives Dick Cheney one of his many,
the donor of Dick Cheney's heart replacement.
Yeah, which I thought was very like
what the fuck.
Part of me liked it. First of all, like the part where he got hit by the truck, I didn't see it.
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I honestly didn't even know about Dick Cheney getting a heart replacement. That wasn't something that was.
He's had health problems his whole life.
Yeah. And I actually kind of liked the joke that they kept making, like he's such a tough son of a bitch that like when he gets 5 heart attacks throughout this movie, and he's just like, yep, I need to go to the hospital. I
think I need to
go to the hospital. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. His mannerisms and stuff are pretty on point. As a performance, you can't take anything away from it. I feel like the rest of the movie around it is so cold and distant and disjointed and strange that it just, as a movie, and look, it's a movie about Dick Cheney. You're not going to walk out feeling warm fuzzies, but at the same time,
especially not that ending monologue where he's looking into the camera,
completely unironic as well, which just made me like kind of go like, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that's being said, but I'm like,
but you kind of just like slapped more icing on an already demolished cake, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
because I feel like it's almost like that's either gilding.
Like you, to me, you're like gilding the little. Like I feel like you could have just cut and like went to blow into credits as soon as she asked him that question, like the reporter.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but and a part of me is like, the reason it is so sour is because you kind of want Dick Cheney to be like, yeah, I probably had some mistakes. You want a moment of clarity. You don't get it.
No.
And you should know better because it's a biopic, and Dick Cheney is still unapologetic about all sorts of stuff that he did.
Yeah, like shooting that guy in the face.
Yes,
he never even addresses
the guy apologize to him.
Yeah, and it addresses it in the movie and uses real news footage in that moment. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, they do that a couple times. They use some real footage with like the actors or whatever.
But then they have like those moments where, you know, he's got his first office in the White House in the 60s under the Nixon administration, and he's like calling his daughter, you know, and he's like, you know, daddy, you know, tell daddy you're proud of him, and it shows his wife like struggling to cook mac and cheese.
Yeah, they're little things like that. You can't avoid humanizing somebody, like I said. You know, even like the part where
I'm just feeling like, oh my god, are you trying to give Dick Cheney heart?
Well, that's one of the things about Dick Cheney, though. When his daughter came out that she was gay and everything, and that's a real thing.
Defended her.
That's a real thing, and he still does that. So I mean, that's not inaccurate. So like, it would be dishonest of Adam McKay not to show that, because that is a thing that he probably.
I felt like that was one of the central themes he was trying to play on too, was the fact that through all of this.
By the way, the end thing where the other Cheney sister runs for office and she's like, I'm against gay marriage and blah blah blah, and she won in 2016. It's true, by the way.
Yeah,
they still never talk. So yeah, like that is the movie is really interesting if you look at it from the lens of like shifting political norms.
So again, we bring this back to like McKay. I feel like does a good job of presenting you with despicable people, but also kind of posing the question, well, you'd kind of do this too, wouldn't you? Like if you had.
I don't agree with that.
Well, maybe not in Dick Cheney's case entirely, but like some of the decisions and some of the things that he does in the movie. There's also that scene where they're sitting around, where they're deliberating on that interpretation of what the executive branch can do. I forget what the name they use for it.
Executive theory or something like that.
Yeah, where it states that
The executive
anything that the president
is
does
by definition not illegal.
Yeah. So they have like a waiter come up to like Rumsfeld and Cheney and his lawyer.
It's Alfred Molina, by the way, Dr. Octopus.
And he's all like, he's reading them off the specials, but the specials are torture.
Here we
and
have enhanced interrogation.
Right.
Just a word we made up for how you can now torture.
And so it brings back stuff from like The Big Short, where you have like Selena Gomez explaining the housing crisis, So he does, I feel like what he does well is he takes these big, lawyery jargon and political ideas and distills them down for the layman.
That's true.
So I feel like we needed this movie just for like you could show this to like a high school class.
Sure.
I feel like those are what these movies are good for, and I applaud McKay for that.
Yeah. I want to get back to, I think Adam McKay is a big lefty. So there's really no way, and no matter what he does, when he makes this movie, some people are going to come out and say like, oh, he's just trying to be mean to old conservative Dick Cheney because he's a Hollywood liberal.
I don't think he is. I think he's making a bigger statement using Cheney as a vehicle.
I'm going to disagree with you and say I think that's exactly what he's doing, because he doesn't like Dick Cheney, and he's saying you shouldn't like him either. And here's why. But he presents it, and he's a good filmmaker, so he presents it in a very stylistic and digestible way. Like you say, he distills it.
So you don't think he's trying to say anything about like,
yes.
These are these things that can and will happen, and also, like, I think he's just trying to be more informative than anything.
He is, but like, in order to be informative, that implies some sort of moral conscience. Like look, he's very heavy-handed through parts of this movie. Another example is like when he's getting his heart taken out and they put his heart on the thing, and it's supposed to be like symbolically, see how heartless he is. He doesn't have a heart. His heart is on the table. There's no heart. Which I thought the movie was going to go black right there, to be like, this is the end. No heart, heartless. He's evil. And like, the point of having that narrator is to humanize the movie and show you the real costs of Dick Cheney's actions.
Right.
600,000 dead men, women, and children in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's less accurate to call it 500,000. That's how many people died. So like, he is making a moral judgment on like this man. But I think ultimately is he says like, everyone does what they do for ostensibly good reasons, because they, at least to some degree, they think it's good. There's a part in the movie where
I like the part in the movie where he's going to like his first day at the internship, right?
Yeah.
And he's watching Rumsfeld give a speech, and Rumsfeld is like saying all of these things that are so not politically correct, making jokes about women, all of these really off-color things, and pretty much just painting the picture that like, stick around long enough and, you can, eat prime rib every night and yada, yada. And then his intern partner, speaks up and says, well, one of us, one of us has to go with the Democrat and another has to go with the Republican. Which one are you? He's like,
which one is Rumsfeld?
Oh, then I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
Like, so I like those moments where it shows the motivations of someone like that. Like, how do you get to that point?
Yeah. I also liked a good example of like that illustrates like how Adam McKay is sort of making a larger statement. And I think I'd rather have that than being like a middle of the road neutral. Is he a bad guy? I don't know. It's up for you to decide.
Yeah. At least he takes a side.
Yeah. And there's a part in the movie where President Nixon is in office with Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
And they're talking about firebombing Cambodia. And
Rumsfeld's like, you see what's going on in that?
And there's a part where Dick Cheney is like, what do we believe? And just Rumsfeld
just laughs his ass off.
And I was like, I wish I thought that was funny. Because I can't.
No, it makes you cringe. It makes you go, ugh.
Yeah. And
this is what we vote for, man.
What makes me cringe even more.
These are the kind of people who we're putting our trust in. Like,
yeah. And what makes me more funny is like, I was watching the movie and there were like other people in the room. And I heard some old dude like 2 rows up and to the right being like, I'm a bunch of liberal propaganda. And I was like, it's not liberal propaganda. We did firebomb Cambodia. It's in history. But yeah, it shows you that these people they don't believe anything.
No, they
And that's
just
their problem. You know, that's like, and I think that's, if there is a message he's trying to say, is like, this guy doesn't believe in anything. But by the end of the movie,
all he believes in is money and power.
I think yeah, but I think at the end of the movie, that monologue is supposed to make us think like this aimless, winding man who has who at first had no real political beliefs, but you can only, you can't have these level of disbelief for so long, because that man was Dick Cheney was in politics for over 40 years.
Mhm.
At some point, you stop worrying about what you believe and you start attaching yourself to this tribal sort of like, new Republican ideology that was blossoming in like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, you got to go with the herd.
And so by the end of it, he's become a victim of his own tribalism and he doesn't even know it. That's why that ending monologue is so disconcerting, because you're just like, the guy's completely unself-aware and he's proud of it.
Right.
That's the thing about it. But
he truly believes that he's a patriot and he is doing what is best for the country without
any evidence to back that up.
Without stepping outside of himself whatsoever.
And he goes, you guys elected me to do this and I did it. And I was like, did we? Is that, first of all, no, we didn't. You're the fight, like
half of us did,
Yeah.
and by a very slim margin.
And they even talk about that in the movie, is like how they won Florida by like what was 500 votes,
Mhm.
and Al Gore won the popular vote, and they literally used the Supreme Court to make George W. Bush and Dick Cheney president and vice president.
Yep.
So like they talk about that, which I thought, I'm surprised they actually went that deep, because not a lot of people know about that. Not about the popular vote, but about like what happened with Florida in that election. That was a big deal. I remember growing up and hearing about that on the news.
Yeah, I remember my parents talking about it.
Yeah. I wanted to, any more like I'm trying to think of any more like funny things. Is there anything in this movie where that does make you laugh, that it is funny? Because a lot of the funny stuff
comes like not from the story or dialogue really, but directly from just the wacky stylistic choices that McKay makes.
Yeah.
Like weird cuts and like rolling the credits, 12 minutes in the movie, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I think, because I don't think you're gonna want to laugh at like the waiter scene, or you're not gonna want to laugh at him shooting the guy in the face with the shotgun, like, because So my ultimate opinion, it's not as good as The Big Short, but I think it's an important movie to have.
Sure. I think it's like it is
like I said, like show it to your college class or whatever. Like I feel like it's a really good informative tool, much like The Big Short was.
Sure. I feel like it does a good job of condensing history and making it appealing. I just lost my thought. I was gonna say something so smart.
Smart.
Yeah.
You're gonna pull some smug right out of there, huh?
No, I feel like Adam McKay, he takes something very difficult and he adds enough style to it to
make it entertaining,
or to make it into a functioning movie. Like as a performance from Christian Bale, I think it's real solid. As a movie from Adam McKay,
what'd you think of?
He does a very good job considering how he is handcuffed to some of the most unlikable people in the world. But I don't know, like I don't have any impulse to like watch this again necessarily.
I would watch it like probably once more, because I feel like I might not have like really absorbed, everything he was trying to throw at me, especially in the parts of it where Cheney does have just about ultimate power. I kind of want to, or at least just like rewatch like the like the close to third act of that movie. Like, I think this is probably where McKay works best, and I am, just a little disappointed that it wasn't as entertaining as something like The Big Short.
At first I was too, but at the end of it, I was like, I don't know what I was expecting it to be. I don't know what else it could be. Like it is literally impossible to make a movie. Like
I'm not gonna say it's like it's genre confused. I'll just say it's an Adam McKay flick.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's very much in his sort of. It's very much satirical. Like the movie has a lot of satire in it, but when you watch satire, usually it's quite funny. And I think he's trying let me put it this way. This movie is him being given a very difficult job and trying to take the parts of the movie that would be difficult and infuse them with enough style to do the best job he can. This movie that's the definition of this movie. It's like, it's the best job he can.
And they even state that at the very beginning. There's a disclaimer. Did you remember seeing that?
No. What are you talking about?
There's a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie where it's like the lead into it, where it's like, this is a story about Dick Cheney, yada yada. Not much is known about him or his private life, as he was a very quiet man and all this stuff. And he's like, but we did the best we fucking could.
Yeah.
It literally says that before the movie. We did the best we fucking could.
Yeah. And I feel like this movie, at no point that I feel like I was bored. And I do feel like it holds your attention, but I feel like as a movie, what you see and the feelings you kind of have leaving it are as good as it's going to get.
Right.
And I feel like that's okay. It doesn't need to be like, look, despite its, it's bombing at the box office. It's made like 35 million on a 60 million budget. So it's going to lose some money probably.
That's disappointing.
And it is getting nominated for quite a bit of awards. So I feel like this is maybe the best result he could hope for.
Do you want to see him do another movie? Do you want to see him have like another shot at another kind of, political movie about?
Not necessarily. I just want him to do what he wants to do. He's he's got an interesting enough vibe at this point. I feel like I'm gonna make you roll your eyes a little bit. There's a couple like this guy takes what would be for another director
really difficult.
No, that's not what I was gonna say, but like visually, like if Robert Redford was making a movie about Dick Cheney or something.
Okay.
There's a part where like they're talking about there's a little scene in where Dick Cheney, I believe, is vice president at this point, and they're talking about there's this guy in Afghanistan, and he says he's a reformed terrorist, and Dick Cheney picks up like a piece of coffee cake and it says, "I said I'm eating healthy," which I chuckled at. But the way he shoots it, there's this nice parallel shot where you see them all sort of like panned out in that way. And there's parts where it's like a crane shot from above, and like visually, he tries to make what would be boring scenes into very
like kinetic scenes,
visually interesting scenes. It's like if Zack Snyder directed a political soap opera or something, because he can't take these not silly ideas, these boring, sterile ideas about people reading papers,
right?
And he has to do something to make them visually interesting. It's like Steve McQueen in Widows with the car ride thing.
Right?
Little things like that. Film is a visual medium, so if you can do anything to give yourself that leg up, it's gonna help you. So I feel like I want him to take that approach and that style to whatever sort of he wants to do next.
All right, I can dig that.
I don't know if I want him to do like another comedy or anything like that, because he's done plenty of those.
I feel like I kind of want him to make one more of these, like one more of these. Would
you like to see something a little more like, I don't know, something a little more positive? I guess I don't know.
Like, okay, what subject matter do you like?
I don't know. You talk about like, I don't know,
like some big cultural upheaval sort of thing. I don't know, like with the 2008 housing crisis, or like with
all the stuff I'm thinking of are really like, they're even darker than this. I was like Waco. I was
like, he's gonna do like the crack epidemic. Like, I don't know, something.
That's not bad. Yeah, you can do that. You could do like,
what if he did like a Terry Schiavo? Like, oh god,
don't relitigate that. I don't care how many Zack Snyder crane shots you put in there. It's not going to make it look better.
Ooh, I think that's like the best joke that you've... Ooh, that's a dark joke.
I feel like you could do maybe something on like the Clintons, perhaps.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
Because he's a big time Bernie Sanders guy, so I don't think he has a lot of appreciation for like. And you know, one thing about this movie that I think is interesting is like it shows. I said it earlier, but I didn't get the finish or whatever. But I said like it's about shifting political norms in this movie. Like at the time, first of all, there's that part where you see Dick Cheney created ISIS in a way.
Yep.
By making Zarqawi
by going after
a bigger figure.
Yeah,
he got
but he literally created an excuse to invade for oil.
Yeah, and I feel like the shifting political norms are very interesting because there's a part where they're test grouping what words mean what feelings and whatever, and they're like when you
that part was really scary to me. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, if you just change the words, people will go like, oh, I like me likey those words. Like
yeah, give me an invasion.
It makes So like when they call like they said like, well, when you say you're at war, like who are we fighting? Is like what's the
They're like, we need a country. We need a country.
Yeah.
Like
and like all those things are like there's a part during one of the things also they use like a little lady news anchor as a narrator too throughout the movie. I don't know who that is or like
chick from A Quiet Place. No, it's not. Oh, forget her name. Yeah. I really like her as an actress. Her name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, they use her for a couple scenes, and there was a part where it was like at this point in history, 53% of the American public supported going to war with Iraq. And now I look at like those numbers now. And how so many people view that war as at worst a war crime, and even some Republicans are like, well, maybe we had to go to Afghanistan, but we killed a lot of innocent people, and maybe we should have just kept over here, and maybe we should have done that. Like that norm.
There's an old Mark Maron joke where it's like he was like, we sure taught those Iraqis for what those Saudi Arabians did. Like,
yeah. No, I definitely feel like the juxtaposition of like. Viewing this movie now from how those political norms are now, like you can't get elected on that platform of like Iraq was good for America or something like that. Like
no, it's pretty much universally
despised.
Yeah,
and that just shows you how effective Dick Cheney was at politicizing things and creating consensus where there was none. Torture is another great example of that. Because he says,
the United it's against the Geneva Convention.
The United States doesn't torture, so. Whatever we do,
it's not torture. Right?
Like I was like,
it's like
isn't that fucking convenient?
Using all these very like backwards rationalizations?
Yes.
In the name of fucking,
it shows that they have
tyranny.
Yeah, it shows you that they have like no values, like and like they don't even know what they want. It's all about sort of projecting like an image. And like no one ever asks the question like, well, why do we want to fight in Iraq? The closest you come to that is like Colin Powell saying like my intel says that we should like Afghanistan is really where we should focus our attention or whatever. And then Steve Carell calls it like a chicken shit or something.
Well, yeah. Well, this because the whole point was for the oil and shit and trying to make money off of their friends and. Yeah. Well, this turned into. The political date really quick.
You can't talk about it without diving into that. It's so hard. Like I tried not to, and then I was like, I can't. Nothing I can do. But I also like the part where they show the Colin Powell speech to the UN, and the narrator says like this. Colin Powell says this is his most shameful moment or whatever that he hates or whatever.
Yep.
There's also people in.
What did you think of Tyler Perry as Colin Powell?
I liked him.
Looks just like him.
Yeah.
Sounds just like him.
I feel like
that was a good performance. Yeah. I really like Tyler Perry in roles like this, like in Gone Girl. His character, his character in Gone Girl. Stop doing stupid Medea movies.
Yeah, I was
Tyler
just gonna
Perry.
Say that. I was like, people sleep.
Like you're a good actor.
People sleep on him because they equate him with those, Medea movies or whatever. But I'm like, he's sort of like Nick Cage. If you give him a good thing to do,
be good.
He can be good. So like, yeah, I'd like to see him. He's in like there's another movie I saw him in that I can't remember the name of. But yeah, I mean, I thought he was really good. And one thing about this movie that I think is interesting is there are people that we see in this movie that are now in Donald Trump's administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Adam McKay
Mike Pence for one. They did a
yeah, we see, but they're like, remember that part where like it was Dick Cheney and his little consortium of people like Paul Wolfowitz and stuff saying like they're going over like the people they have in certain places. They're like, there's yellow people,
oh yeah,
and
I really like
red
that
people.
part. That's another Big Shorty kind of sequence.
And at one point, like there's an example
where it shows you just how much reach they really have, and how they put the I guess like dunces in like unimportant positions, or in positions in which they'd get steamrolled.
And they put people who are like not their allies but not their friends either, like in yellow. Like Colin Powell is not seen as someone who's 100% on their deal, so they kind of see him as like, well, we gotta keep an eye on him, which is weird. Like he's so adversarial in his own cabinet. It was so strange. And like there's a part where they said like, oh well, we got John Bolton over there at the Department of Defense or whatever. John Bolton is now back in Donald Trump's administration, and he was like one of the biggest, foremost voices of like saying we should go to war with Iran. So like that guy's still around and people still listen to him. Like people take anything he says seriously, and it's crazy to me. So I thought that was funny. And I feel like
I think that this movie,
making a not so subtle insinuation. We don't learn anything.
I think that this movie hit at the right time too. I actually wish it would have hit like a year ago. Sure. Because I feel like it's appropriate for the times. Like we're forgetting that we can't just like sit back and like watch things unfold.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's solid. I'm interested to see what he does, and I want him to bring some more. If he does more movies like this, I just want to see him use more like interesting visual, like we were talking, like visual tricks, and bringing more of his style to these things, because he makes it. It's
a really unique style.
He makes it palatable, even if it's not just like the scene, like the waiter scene, even if it's just like how he uses the camera to frame things. And like even like that beginning scene with is it Liz Cheney or Lynn Cheney? What was Amy Adams? Lynn Cheney. Okay, I always get them confused. Even at the beginning where they show her like chiding Dick Cheney for getting drunk or whatever, right? And they show like
lighting a fire under his ass.
Yeah, there's a part where like she's like, I said this earlier when there's not spoilers. Like she's like, I saw my mom suffer under this, all sorts of stuff, and you see like the silent clips of his dad
just
like,
really
slamming
quick
stuff on the table. That's not like a camera trick, that's just an editing trick, but like little things that he does like that just like, I don't know, it's that extra 10% that edges the movie towards good.
He these little injections here and there that make,
and they tip the movie towards like me liking it. Because if I don't know if some little things like that weren't in there, or like that shot.
Because if he would have just played it flat and straight, I wouldn't have liked this movie probably.
Yeah, like the shot of the heart on the thing, or the slow zoom in of that last monologue,
or the way he uses the narrator character, stuff like that. Like
whether it's like cool camera tricks or like story tricks or editing tricks, those things make the movie better, because without them, in the hands of like a less interested filmmaker, they would have just like been like, and then we cut to the next scene, and then
it's going to be a boring movie that you play on History Channel.
I don't know if it's boring, but it just becomes, it's less interest. It's just literally less interesting, because I mean, just talking about the way he injected those scenes into the movie make it better, because they don't take anything away. Like if I saw that scene about Amy Adams crying and talking about like how her mother was abused and maybe
or like the scene of them in bed, if he would have just had like straight dialogue, it's not like the scenes by themselves would have been terrible, but those little things make it just that little extra, they elevate it, and they bring it up on a level that's different from what it could be.
Also the scene where Amy Adams, it implies that maybe Amy Adams' mother was murdered. And then there's that part where Dick Cheney tells her father, like, don't ever come around my children ever again, or whatever. That's another example, like, that's probably true. And that's another example of them, like, trying to sort of, you can't help but humanize people in certain ways.
Right.
I wonder if that's true. Like, if her.
Well, it says that, they never
investigated.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That about does it here at Horizon Studios. This has been The Movie Date with Rob and Zakk. I'm Zakk.
And I'm Rob. And like us on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and comment down below and all that stuff. What do we want to see next, Zakk?
Oh, I don't know.
Is it Glass? I feel like Glass comes out in
I feel
like a
like
few days.
Glass is the.
Well, it's my turn. I get to pick the next one because we're doing the alternating now.
Oh yeah, we back into rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will wholeheartedly vote for Glass. Then I feel like,
Your vote doesn't matter.
well,
I pick whatever I want.
I was gonna go see it anyway, Rob. I also feel like we should try to check out some of these movies that have been getting lots of buzz and winning lots of awards. I want to see.
We'll torrent Green Book.
I want to see Green Book. I want to see Roma.
Yeah, me too. Like I need to Alfonso Cuarón. I need to see more of his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can find us on Podbean as well, and our Facebook page is now up and running. Please go give it a like.
Give it a like. Join the community.
The movie date.
We posted like a few polls, even like, what do you want to see us do and talk about?
Yeah.
Share it with your friends.
Do we want to go through some of those on the air real quick? See what the results are. You want to do that?
I don't.
You don't? No. Okay.
If we're being honest, I don't. We're not even to the point of monetization. I don't think many people have voted.
Fair enough.
So yeah, go vote, people.
Vote. I think we have one thing is like, do we want more animated flicks or do we want more rom-coms and whatever?
Or heck, do you want to hear us talk about more like TV stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, our very first episode was True Detective.
Our very first episode was the Cloverfield Paradox.
Our second, our very second most episode was True. Okay.
Yeah. All right, people. That's it for the podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.